let me tell you a story about sticky stuff, baseball, tampering, and urine.
This is the last knot. My dad told me to say this.
Do you remember when Ravi Jadeja put something on his spinning finger? It was a very weird situation, not least because the BCCI decided not to fight the charge, and almost seemed eager to accept the ICC's punishment. The final decision cleared Jadeja of ball tampering charges altogether. But when it first happened, that was what people were talking about, that Jadeja had tampered with the ball. And some of that makes sense. This does not appear to be an incident of changing the condition of the ball intentionally. As in, he wasn't trying to pick the seam, scuff up the ball, or even put on some sort of cream on it to get some reverse swing. The cream goes on his finger, and despite the ball being in his hand, he puts the cream on the finger and not on the ball at all. In fact, even after coating his finger, he drops the ball out of his hand entirely. If the idea was to get the cream on the ball, he missed a pretty good opportunity to do so. However, in the playing conditions, in the Code of Conduct 2.14, it says, any actions likely to alter the condition of the ball, which are not specifically permitted under clause 41.3.2, may be regarded as unfair. Jadeja put cream on his spinning finger that was likely to alter the condition of the ball, even if that wasn't his first choice. This is actually ball tampering, and he probably should have been charged with that. And before that gets you too emotional, remember that despite what happened to the Australian players over Sandpapergate, most charges for ball tampering result in a fine and no suspension. In fact, things have slightly changed since the Australians got involved, and that was only because the ICC had to pretend they were taking it seriously, despite actively turning a blind eye to massive tampering for well over a decade. So poor Nicholas Pooran was suspended for 4 T20 internationals, and Dennis Charnamal missed a test match as well. Still, nothing compared to what happened to the Australian players because of their board. But if you want to know what used to happen for ball tampering, South African captain Faf du Plessis was caught tampering with the ball not once, but twice, and was given a grand total of a 0-match ban. They only fined him. Would you like to know how big the fine was? It was 50% of his match fee, which happened to be the same that he had once been given for having the wrong colour shoelaces on in a test match. So even though Jadeja probably should have been penalised for accidentally tampering with the ball, everyone decided that the easier part of this was just to give a small slap on the wrist, his wrist and not Mohamed Siraj's wrist that was oiled up. And because of this, outside of a small news cycle, at least by Border Gavaskar trophy standards, we all moved on. Well, you did. I did not move on. Because while I am fairly certain he was not trying to alter the condition of the ball, I do think something else was going on here that certainly needs to be talked about. It's something that probably should have ended up with Jadeja getting roughly the same amount of fine, maybe slightly higher. But certainly, again, you wouldn't have thought that for a first-time offence he would have been suspended. But I want to start a conversation about this. So far, no one is talking about what I think is the bigger issue here. And that is the fact that some bowlers, mostly spinners and a few fast bowlers who are more known for their slower deliveries, are using artificial methods to put more revolutions on the ball. Now, I have no idea if Jadeja was doing this, but that it was mentioned so little when this happened was very weird. And the first thing you need to know about all this is that finger spinners are used to putting weird stuff on their skin in order to help their bowling. Because I have talked with enough offies over the years who have told me that they intentionally piss on their own fingers. Yes, this is a weird thing to tell you, but most bowlers who really give their finger spinners a rip end up tearing skin off their bowling digit. And so the theory was that you could toughen up your skin by pissing on it. This isn't even just a cricket thing, by the way. Baseballers also believe this, and it turns out that it is very much not true. It actually weakens the skin, which is something to tell your niece very early on in her career if she looks like becoming a promising tweaker. But let's just stick with baseball here for a moment. And I do mean stick. In 2020, Major League Baseball had a big problem. Essentially, the secret was out. The reason that baseball pitchers were getting such amazing revolutions on their various creations was because so many of them were using what is referred to as either spider tack or just simply sticky stuff. Sticky stuff just allowed you to have a lot more revolutions, which means that the batters can hit you less. Great for the pitchers. And baseball had no issue with this for many, many years until casual fans started finding out that that's what pitchers were using. It's a bit like what was happening in cricket. Cricket fans were happy to watch reverse swing for years and years, knowing that tampering was going on. But once it made the news, that's when cricket and the fans got really upset. I mean, for those of you who don't know, the history of tampering with the ball is incredibly long. And it goes well beyond just reverse swing as well. People have been picking at the seam, putting things on the ball that will help it swing conventionally, changing the condition of the ball since we had a cricket ball. But what the pitchers were guilty of was very similar to what the Australian team was guilty of. They made sure that everyone knew they were openly cheating. And pitchers who didn't use sticky stuff actually did scientific tests to prove the difference. And so baseball had to come in and stop this by implementing checks on whether pitchers had any sticky stuff on their person. It's a weird sentence to say. Essentially, baseball brought in a rule that allowed their umpires to pat down their pitchers. So am I saying that this is what is going on with Ravi Jadeja? No, I certainly have no proof of that, and it could just be the pain-relieving cream. But the fact that the ICC never even looked into the fact that it could be cricket's sticky stuff is really quite odd. They just took his word for it. And the other reason that it's quite interesting is because cricketers have told me that this is actually happening already. A few players had made jokes to it, but I never quite narrowed it down with them. But when this picture of Simon Harmer got out there, and a few players sent it to me directly, it was clear that cricketers believed that this was happening, whether it was or not. And again, I have absolutely no idea what Simon Harmer has on his hands here. But there are certainly people who believe that this is the same kind of chalk that weightlifters use to ensure that the bar doesn't fall from their hand. And by people, I mean I actually talked to some people who do weightlifting. Now, for all I know, Simon Harmer just had a no zinc problem go wrong, or I don't know, a lot of talcum powder spilt out when he was trying to deal with a particularly bad crotch itch. But the point is, a professional cricketer should not be putting whatever this is on the ball or on their hands. And this one's really obvious, but it's not always, because there are plenty of gels, creams, ointments, and pastes that you can use. Golfers, rugby players, gymnasts, Aussie rules players, and most importantly, pole dancers all use these things to help with their grip. And this particular thing you're looking at now, a former player sent me this link. And if spinners are doing it to get extra spin, even if it doesn't work, because I don't know, maybe it won't, then surely something should be done about it, right? All we know at the moment is that Harmer and Jadeja put something on their hands. And it could be completely innocent. And it's also possible all those players who told me this was widespread are just, talking nonsense. And even if Harmer and Jadeja were guilty, we're talking about a very small fine here. The real problem isn't them. But the bigger issue might be if everyone is doing it and if it is as effective as it was in baseball. Luckily enough, there is a fairly elegant solution here. Every couple of overs, the umpires could shake hands with the bowlers who are getting good dip on their slow balls or spin off the wicket. It's nothing like baseball's pat down. In fact, it would be an incredibly cricket way of handling something like this. And if this is anything like reverse swing, then it might take years/decades for anything to happen at all. And then suddenly there will be a huge controversy for what is already a common practice amongst cricketers when someone is caught with, Acme super glue spray. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because players are already talking about it and sending these photos and discussing the Jadeja incident. And so I thought that the conversation had to start here, and for some reason, I began it with pee and baseball.